Hello, my name is Caleb Rogers, and I'll be talking about how obesity is a contemporary health issue in today's society. Obesity is one of the most pervasive and chronic diseases in our nation and globally. It is a leading cause of United States mortality, morbidity, disability, healthcare utilization, and healthcare costs. Obesity is still growing rapidly, and it is causing health and economic issues today that we may have to deal with for generations. There are three main issues that I would like to talk about today surrounding obesity in our nation. The first being that the obesity rates are climbing at a dangerous pace. The second is that obesity raises the risk of many other life threatening diseases, including coronary heart disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and many others. The third issue is that obesity brings about negative factors on the American and global economy. Before I go back to these main topics, I'd like to take a few seconds to go ahead and talk about what obesity is and how we define if someone is overweight, obese, normal weight, etc. Obesity is defined as obtaining an excess amount of adipose tissue, or what most people call fat tissue. There are many different methods for determining the amount of tissue you have, or if that's in excess, but the most common method is using the body mass index of a person, or most people call it BMI. The BMI is calculated by dividing a person's body weight by their height, whether it be in kilograms and meters or pounds and inches. There is another way, simpler way, which I'll show you in a few minutes, which has a graph in which you find the coordinates of your dimensions. While this calculation is quite often accurate, it is very skewed for people of a muscular build and pregnant women. For most people that are listening or watching this, you guys probably do not have your calculators out, so I'm going to go ahead and skip over to a graph where it'll be much easier for you to pause the video and figure out your own dimensions and your BMI. Either you're really quick at finding your coordinates or you pause the video and figured out your BMI, but we'll go ahead and move on. I'm going to show a quick demonstration using my height and weight. And as you can see, I fall into the number of 28, which is actually considered overweight. When I first saw this number, I was a little alarmed at me being overweight, but then I remembered that BMI is based off of averages, and the average person isn't built very muscular. Uh, I'm not being proud here, but I am a collegiate water polo player, and due to my rigorous exercise level, I am built much more muscular than the average person. Therefore, me being overweight makes a little more sense. But now that we've answered the question of what obesity is, let's go and start diving into the first issue around the topic, and the fact that obesity rates are climbing at a dangerous pace. As an example, studies done in 1962 and 2010 show a 23% increase in adult obesity in America, rising from 13% of American adults being obese to a record-breaking 36%. Obesity is rapidly becoming the leading cause of preventable death in the United States, with obesity-related deaths projected to soon surpass deaths related to tobacco abuse. This is according to Kulisek in 2010. Furthermore, the incidence of obesity has more than doubled in the United States since 1960, with almost two-thirds of the adult population currently obese or overweight. Perhaps more alarming is the increase in overweight children. Over the past 30 years, this rate has risen from 6% to a whopping 33%. That's according to a study done by Alliance for a Healthier Generation in 2016. As we all know, smoking has been one of the most feared actions in the American culture throughout the past century. But the alarming rates of obesity bring light to the fact that it brings about the same decrease of quality of life as smoking does. From 1993 to 2008, there was an 18.5% decrease in incidence involving tobacco, while, on the other hand, the amount of people who are declared as obese or overweight rose by 85%. I believe that it is understood across the nation that there are uncountable dangers that we bring into our lives when we enter into tobacco and smoking use. Why do we not take the same approach when we consider obesity? Because it is clearly having the same effect in our lives, if not worse, than smoking. So let's move on to the effects that obesity actually has physiologically on our bodies. First off, obesity raises the risk of many other life-threatening diseases, including the already introduced coronary heart disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and others. Let's go ahead and talk about heart disease and obesity. Heart disease is one of the more scary things that can come from having the risk factor of obesity. As stated here, it's by the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute in 2012. As your body mass index rises, so does your risk for coronary heart disease. Obesity also stands as the leading risk indicators for hypertension, a disease that can lead to fatal heart diseases and is very preventable. We must know that. We must realize that obesity and hypertension, everything that comes along with obesity, is very preventable. A quote by the Obesity Action Coalition in 2016: weight loss can lead to a significant drop in blood pressure. One study showed that in a 4-year follow-up of 181 overweight hypertensive patients, a 10% weight loss produced an average of a 4.3 to 3.8 millimeters of mercury fall in blood pressure. That's huge. We need to realize how preventable this actually is. Next, we'll go ahead and look at type 2 diabetes, which is also known as the contractible type of diabetes. Due to the body's excess amount of adipose tissue when obese, the body has to overproduce insulin, in turn becoming unable to properly balance blood glucose levels, which is ridiculously important to our physiological uh, equilibrium, as you would say. A quote by the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute in 2012 as well, again, says diabetes is a leading cause of early death, CHD, stroke, kidney disease, and blindness. And then they go on further to say most people who have type 2 diabetes are overweight. Are we beginning to see the true nature of obesity? It can almost be considered as a gateway disease. Once we have obesity, it opens the floodgates to many other things that we will be more susceptible to. While I did not go into detail about these other diseases, these 7 listed here are also well known to be contracted once obesity is present. For some of the people viewing this video, I might be sharing all this information thus far in vain, due to the fact that people's problems with weight, or some people see as self-control, aren't affecting you personally on a physical, tangible level. So let me share an argument. Let me pose an argument here that our problem as a community with obesity is affecting you through your wallet. That's right, it's affecting you through your tax dollars. The tone changes a little bit about this discussion once your money is being affected here, isn't it? Healthcare costs are skyrocketing to numbers exceeding $190 billion for the disease and the related comorbidities. Due to the health factors surrounding obesity, quote, obese men accumulate an additional $1,152 a year in medical spending, while obese women account for an extra $3,615 per year, unquote. That's by Investopedia in 2015. Furthermore, the economic impact of obesity globally amounts to nearly $2 trillion, 2.8% of global GDP, annually. That's also research done by Investopedia in 2015. Due to its economic burden and the amount of people affected globally, obesity is among smoking and armed violence in the list of top 3 social burdens generated by humans. We are literally strangling ourselves physiologically and economically due to this community problem of obesity. Let's go ahead and realize that 2/3 of our adult population is dealing with this problem. And so are we, even though we may not be obese ourselves through our tax paying. So let's go ahead and look at approaches we can take to fix this epidemic. While the rates of obesity continue to grow, many people, groups, and organizations are turning their focus or standing up towards this epidemic of obesity in order to slow its growth. Groups are pushing to change the FDA's involvement in the food industry to a much more aggressive position to help to keep unhealthy foods off the shelves, rather than only making sure that these, quote, options, unquote, tell the consumer how bad it is for them. Even the military is recognizing the problem of obesity rates. The military has not changed its physical requirements in 14 years, but due to the times and due to the rates skyrocketing, it is revamping them. Another step that we can take as a nation would be to attack the advertising of fast food and other unhealthy diet options. Advertisements seem to constantly target children, which leads to not only the child's consumption of poor diet options, but in turn, the entire family ends up eating the food together. A study was done to see the effect of advertisement on children, family, and fast food consumption, actually. In Quebec, Canada, there was a ban put on advertisements that targeted children. A group up there did a study, and at the end, they saw that there was a total of $88 million loss in fast food purchasing per year. This study just proves that the monitoring of advertising can reduce the cash flow and consumption of fast food, thus reducing, hopefully, the obesity rate. So, what do we do with this information now? Where do we go? We need to know that the obesity rates have never been this high in the history of mankind. Obesity as a disease, brings about a landslide of other health issues, low quality of life, and also an economic burden that is absolutely unnecessary and was covered here in this presentation. We not only need to watch what each of us individually eats, but we also need to figure out what is best for our community, nation, and world, which I hope after this presentation we realize isn't obesity. Obesity is a problem that is preventable and is only present from our doing. Just like we created this epidemic, we need to stand up, take charge together, and make a change. Again, this is Caleb Rogers, and thank you for your time.